You ever have one of those days where your whole life changes and you don't even know it yet? For me, that day started like any other. I was halfway through a double shift at Riverside Memorial, blood on my sleeves, adrenaline in my veins, pager still buzzing in my pocket when the call came in. Another pileup on the I-10. For cars, multiple injuries. And just like that, I was gone again. But I wasn't just a paramedic. I was a father. And I had an 8-year-old daughter, Lily, waiting at home with her inhaler, her sketchbook, and that quiet bravery only kids like her seem to carry. That morning, I did what any single dad would do with no backup. I called my parents. Now, before you say it, yeah, I knew better. My parents, Gerald and Marilyn, weren't exactly what you'd call warm. If you weren't their golden child, my sister Victoria, you were just someone they tolerated. But they said they'd help. Said they'd keep Lily for 3 days, just 3, while I handled the emergency surge at the hospital. I packed Lily's meds, her favorite snacks, even wrote a note about how she sleeps with the night light on and hums when she's scared. I handed her off, kissed her forehead, and told her I'd be back before the weekend. She smiled at me, brave as ever. "It's just 3 days, Daddy," she said. 3 days. That's all it was supposed to be. What I didn't know, what no one bothered to tell me, was that my parents had other plans. Big ones. Hawaiian ones. And they sure as hell didn't include my daughter. The first sign something was off came Friday afternoon. I was grabbing bad coffee from the hospital vending machine when I got a call from Lily's school. "Mr. Walker," the voice said, "we just wanted to confirm that Lily's change in guardianship is temporary, correct?" Guardianship? I blinked. "I'm sorry, what change?" The silence on the other end lasted a second too long. "Oh, we received a notice from Child Protective Services. Your parents submitted it. Stated that Lily's mother was unavailable indefinitely and they were assuming care." My chest tightened. I could barely speak. "I'm her father. Her only legal guardian." More silence. Then the polite scramble. "Oh, we see. Perhaps there's been a clerical mistake." Clerical mistake, my ass. I called my parents. No answer. Called again. Nothing. Next, I tried Victoria. It rang once. Then voicemail. Not even a "Hey, what's up, big bro?" this time. Just the default message like I didn't exist. I started pacing the ER hallway, heartbeat thumping like a war drum. That's when I checked social media. And there it was. A family selfie. Gerald, Marilyn, Victoria, her husband, her 2 kids. All smiles, all sun-kissed, standing on some resort balcony in Honolulu, drinks in hand, lays around their necks. Caption? "Much-needed family getaway. Hibiscus family man woman boy #Ohana #blessed #quality time." But where was my daughter? Not in the picture. Not even mentioned. Not even a damn emoji for her. By nightfall, I was standing outside my parents' empty house, banging on a locked door, yelling into the wind. Their car was gone. Mail piled up. Lights off. And my daughter? Gone too. No note. No call. No explanation. It took me another hour to find the number for CPS. A woman named Andrea picked up. When I said my name, she paused. "You're Lily's father?" "Yes," I said through gritted teeth. "And I need to know where she is." Andrea's voice dropped. "Mr. Walker, I think you better come in." And that's when I knew. They didn't just leave. They got rid of her. The CPS office smelled like old carpet and new panic. Andrea met me in the lobby. Late 30s, kind eyes, the kind of calm you only get from dealing with 100 broken families. But even she looked uncomfortable when she glanced at the file in her hands. "I reviewed everything this morning," she said, ushering me into a room with no windows. "We need to talk about what happened while you were at work." I didn't sit. Just stood there, fists clenched, every nerve lit. "Your parents claimed emergency guardianship," she began. "Said Lily's mother was unreachable and you had an undisclosed health issue, mental exhaustion, I believe was the term." I laughed. Not out of humor. Out of disbelief. Mental exhaustion? I've worked 70-hour weeks for 8 years and still packed lunch for my daughter every morning. That's their story. Andrea held up a hand. I didn't say I believed it. But with both maternal grandparents deceased and your ex-wife unreachable, protocol kicked in. I sat. Hard. "Where's Lily?" "She's safe," Andrea said. "With a foster family. The Martinezes. Good people, vetted, licensed. They were the closest match when we couldn't reach you." "Couldn't reach me?" My voice cracked. "I've had the same number for 10 years. She looked at me. "Mr. Walker, no one even tried." I covered my face with both hands. She must have been terrified. "She asked about you." "A lot." But she adjusted quickly. "She's strong." "Of course she was. She's my kid." Andrea handed me a folder. Inside were copies of the falsified forms. My parents had listed themselves as primary caregivers. My sister Victoria had signed off as an alternate contact. And next to mother's availability, one word stood alone. Unavailable. Not deceased. Not out of state. Not unknown. Just unavailable. Like a bad connection or a busy signal. They made my daughter an inconvenience. Filed her away like a form that interrupted vacation plans. I stared at Andrea. I want her back. She nodded. You will. But it's a process. Until then, we'll schedule supervised visits. I stood up, breathing like a man trying not to drown. No. Not supervised. That's my daughter. Andrea didn't flinch. Then prove it. And just like that, my fight began. I hadn't seen Lily in 4 days. That's a long time when you're a single dad used to packing lunch, checking homework, and reading bedtime stories with a flashlight because she likes the shadows to dance on the ceiling. When I finally walked into that visitation room, she looked up at me with those big, steady eyes, hazel like her mother's, serious like mine, and didn't say a word. She didn't run. Didn't cry. She just sat on the little plastic couch between Mr. and Mrs. Martinez and whispered, "Hi, Daddy." I swallowed hard. I wanted to fall to my knees and swear to her that everything would be okay. That I would fix this. That the people who did this would pay. But what came out was just, "Hey, Lilybean." She stood slowly, walked over, and put her arms around my waist. Not a tight hug, more like she was checking if I was real. If I was staying. "You didn't come back," she said into my shirt. "I tried," I whispered. Then she pulled back and asked the question that's lived in my chest ever since. Did I do something wrong? My knees buckled. I dropped to the floor and pulled her into my lap. "No. You didn't. Not one thing." The Martinezes gave us space. Andrea sat in the corner, quiet, taking notes, watching. Lily reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny sketch. Her, standing next to me. But in the drawing I was behind a wall. And she'd written 3 words under it in crooked, careful handwriting. "Daddy got lost?" I nodded toward it. "That what you felt?" She looked away. "Grandma said you were sick. That you couldn't take care of me right now." Of course she did. That woman would rather set fire to the truth than admit her own lies. And Aunt Victoria told the people at the office that you were very tired and needed time off. Like, time out? For grown-ups. I clenched my jaw so hard I felt my molars grind. "Do you believe them?" I asked. Lily studied me for a long second. "No. But I wanted to." I pulled her close again. "I'm getting you home. I promise." She nodded once. And then she whispered like she was sharing the world's biggest secret. "Mrs. Martinez said you looked angry in your picture. But I told her that's just your brave face." And right there, sitting on that cheap tile floor in a government office, I knew one thing. This wasn't just betrayal. This was war. By the time my parents' plane touched down in LA, I already had screenshots, timestamps, and a thick stack of righteous fury. But first, I went for the soft target, my sister, Victoria. 30 years old, lawyer's wife, picture-perfect family, at least on Instagram. Her grid was a shrine to curated chaos, beachy curls, overpriced kids wear, poolside, candids she definitely staged. And their slap in the middle was the post that cracked everything open. "Blessed to be in paradise with the people who matter most. Desert Island 2 Arts #family first." The caption hit harder than I expected. Because people who matter most? Didn't include my daughter. Didn't include the little girl they left behind like forgotten luggage so they could sip cocktails and compare Pilates routines. I sent Victoria a message. "We need to talk." She left me on read for 6 hours. Then finally, a reply. "Back in town. Can we keep this civil?" Civil. They put my child in foster care without telling me and she wants to keep it civil? I met her at a cafe downtown. Neutral ground. She showed up in designer sunglasses and that tight-lipped smile she wears like armor. "Sam," she said, sliding into the booth like we were catching up over lattes. "Cut the performance, Vic," I said flatly. "Where's Lily in all your vacation photos? Or was she just not on brand enough for Maui?" She sighed dramatically. Like I was the one making things difficult. "Look, Mom and Dad said they'd handle it. They made it sound like it was temporary. Like you were dealing with a breakdown or something. You know how intense you get. That hit like a sucker punch." "You believe them?" I asked. Victoria hesitated. "I didn't know Lily would end up in the system, okay? I just signed the form they handed me. I thought you were looped in." I pulled out the CPS document, shoved it across the table. "This says you signed off saying I was unreachable and her mother was unavailable. You knew both were lies." Her face paled. "I didn't read it that carefully." "That right there?" That was Victoria in a sentence. She never did read anything that didn't have her name in bold. I stood up. I'm filing a complaint, I said. You, Mom, and Dad gave false statements to CPS. You impersonated a guardian. That's a felony, Vic. Her eyes widened. You wouldn't. Don't worry, I said, turning to leave. I'm not coming after you in court. She exhaled, relieved too quickly. I'm coming after you in public. I didn't need to kick down doors or scream into the void. I had something better. Receipts. See, my parents thought they were clever. They thought being on vacation while claiming to be guardians wouldn't leave a trail. But Instagram is a confession booth for narcissists. Victoria's page alone was a gold mine, not just captions, timestamps. Real-time evidence of where they were, what they were doing, and more importantly, who they weren't with. One post from Marilyn stood out. A photo of her holding a cocktail the size of a toddler's head, sunglasses on, pool in the background. Finally disconnected, 2 hearts, no calls. No stress. Just family. The date? The same day CPS said they took custody of Lily. The same day they claimed to be unable to reach me. I forwarded it to Rachel, my friend and family law attorney. She didn't even reply with words, just a single emoji, bomb. While she filed the official complaint, I kept gathering. My parents' neighbor, Mrs. Dufresne, said no one had been home all week. She remembered the day they left because Gerald made a snide comment about the airline's first-class lounge being beneath him. Classic Gerald. He thought human decency was optional if you owned cufflinks. I called Detective Wilson next. A family crimes specialist I'd met years back during a rough call at the ER. He owed me a favor and he listened. When I was done laying out the timeline, the signatures, the faked guardianship, the mental exhaustion lie they used to write me out of my daughter's life like I was a post-it note, he whistled. That's bad, he said. It gets worse, I replied. Because the more I dug, the clearer the motive became. The trip wasn't spontaneous. It had been planned for months. Flights booked. Hotel reserved. Spa appointments set. They never intended to take care of Lily. They just needed her out of the way. So they lied. Filed paperwork. Handed my daughter over to the state like she was an inconvenience. Also, they could toast their legacy and float in infinity pools without a single ounce of guilt. I hung up with Wilson, poured myself a stiff coffee, and stared out the window. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to build something they couldn't ignore, a case. And when I was done, they wouldn't just regret the trip. They'd regret underestimating me. The next morning, I walked into the county clerk's office like I was clocking into battle. I wasn't angry. Not in the way they expected. I was methodical. Calm. The way you get when the fire inside you has turned cold and sharp. I requested every public document with my name, Lily's name, and most importantly, my parents' names attached. The clerk printed it out without much reaction. Just another day, another file. But to me, those pages were dynamite. They had signed off as temporary guardians under emergency circumstance. Claimed I was unavailable due to mental instability. Filed under oath. And there it was, my father's neat, deliberate signature right next to a box labeled "No immediate contact available with biological father." I laughed. Actually laughed right there at the counter. Because Gerald Walker always believed in 2 things, order and appearances. But this was disorder. This was fraud. And it was messy. Exactly the thing he hated being caught in. I took copies, thanked the clerk, and walked straight into Rachel's office. She read everything quietly, red pen in hand, brows raised so high I thought they might climb off her face. When she finally looked up, she said, "They're done. Think we can get Lily back soon? We'll file for emergency reinstatement of custody by the end of the week." And the charges? Rachel nodded. Negligence. False statement to a government agency. Potential endangerment. I sat back in the chair, trying to picture my father in a courtroom. Not behind his desk or golf clubs, but in a witness box, squirming. They're not going to see this coming, are they? I asked. Rachel smiled. That's the thing about people like your parents. They believe the rules are for everyone else. I left her office and walked straight to the Martinez home. It was time to see my daughter again. Time to remind her I hadn't stopped fighting. Not for a second. The Martinez house sat on a quiet street lined with sycamores and strollers. When Lily opened the door and saw me on the porch, she didn't say a word, just threw herself into my arms like she was waking up from a bad dream. "I missed you," she whispered. I held her tighter. "I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere." Mrs. Martinez stepped out behind her, mid-50s, kind eyes, that firm, no-nonsense warmth you can't fake. "You must be Samuel," she said. "Yes, ma'am." She nodded. "Come inside." Their home smelled like cinnamon and safety. Nothing extravagant, just clean, lived in, and calm. Lily led me to the kitchen where a mug of tea was already waiting for me. Jasmine. My favorite. I asked Mrs. Martinez to make it, Lily said proudly. You always drink it when you're thinking. She remembered. Mr. Martinez joined us. Former Navy. Quiet but sharp. He didn't ask for details. Didn't offer pity. Just said, we're glad you're here. And in that moment it hit me, this family, strangers to me just a week ago, had done more for my daughter than her own blood had. Lily's been helping me with the garden, Mrs. Martinez said, smiling. She says you're not good at growing things. I smirked. She's not wrong. I once killed a cactus. Lily giggled. First time I'd heard that laugh in days. We played a board game. Ate cookies. Read a few pages from the book she and Mrs. Martinez had started. But when Lily went to the bathroom, Mrs. Martinez leaned in. She asks about you every night. Sleeps with your hoodie. My throat tightened. She's been brave. But she's scared. Don't let the calm fool you. I won't, I said. I'm going to fix this. Mrs. Martinez nodded. Good. Because she still flinches when someone says grandma. That sentence hit harder than anything I'd heard yet. I tucked Lily in an hour later. Kissed her forehead. Promised her we were going home soon. As I stepped out, Mr. Martinez followed me to the door. Families like yours, he said, they hide behind smiles. But the truth always leaks through. I nodded. I've got evidence. Witnesses. A lawyer. He opened the door. Then burned the mask off them, Samuel. 2 subpoenas went out on Monday. 1 to my parents. 1 to my sister. Rachel didn't flinch when I asked her to make it official. They crossed a line, she said. Now we make them explain it. In court. Under oath. Detective Wilson called that same afternoon. You like this, he said. We just had a little chat with your folks. In Hawaii? Correction. At the airport. Apparently, the arrest warrant for questioning under child welfare misrepresentation hit the system while they were still sipping complimentary Chardonnay in the first-class lounge. TSA flagged them. They were escorted off the plane. Not in handcuffs, but not with a lot of dignity either. They lawyered up? I asked. Wilson chuckled. Your dad started yelling about being a respected man. Your mom asked if the officer could hold her purse while she called Victoria. So, basically, yes. I wish I could say I felt joy. Or satisfaction. Or even triumph. But mostly, I just felt tired. Tired of pretending this wasn't personal. Tired of acting like this was just about law or process. Because this wasn't paperwork. This was betrayal stitched together with arrogance and lies. Judge Caroline Reeves was assigned to the emergency hearing. And if you've never seen a woman with a spine of steel and a zero-tolerance policy for manipulation, let me paint you a picture, short, sharp, and dressed like she was always about 5 seconds from burning down someone's delusion. She read the file for 5 minutes in silence. Then she looked up and said, let me be clear. This is not a debate about preferences. This is about a child placed into the system because her own grandparents prioritized a vacation. Rachel didn't need to say a word. Judge Reeves turned to the CPS rep. Was the father unreachable? No, Your Honor. His contact info was accurate. He was actively working and available the entire time. And the mother? Not in contact. But the father is the sole custodial parent. Judge Reeves leaned back. So this was fabricated. The CPS rep nodded. Yes. Then came the part I'll never forget. The judge turned to me. Mr. Walker, your daughter is being returned to your custody immediately. Full, unrestricted. And I strongly suggest you seek a restraining order because, frankly, I wouldn't trust your parents to hold a goldfish. My hands started shaking. Lily was coming home. Not eventually. Not when it was convenient. Now. I pulled up to the Martinez house like a man coming back from war. Lily was already on the porch, holding her little backpack in one hand and Mr. Martinez's hand in the other. She wore the same hoodie I'd given her weeks ago, sleeves pulled down over her hands like armor. When she saw me, she didn't run this time. She just walked, slow and steady, and said, Are we going home now? I knelt down. Yeah, baby, we're going home. Mrs. Martinez hugged her goodbye, whispered something in Spanish I didn't catch, and pressed a small envelope into my hand. Just a letter, she said. For later. I nodded, throat tight. As we pulled away, Lily looked out the window and said, They don't yell at each other here. It was nice. That one sentence hit me harder than anything Judge Reeves could have said. Because it wasn't just about custody anymore. It was about repair. We drove in silence most of the way. Lily stared at the clouds. I stole glances at her, watching the way she held herself. Calm but watchful. like she was waiting for the next bad thing to fall. When we got home, she hesitated at the door. "It smells like you," she said. "I missed that." We walked in together. I showed her the drawing she left on the fridge. Still there. I never took it down. She smiled. Then she asked, "Do I have to see Grandma and Grandpa again?" "No," I said. "Not if you don't want to." She nodded. "Good. They forgot my inhaler." Mrs. Martinez remembered. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just emotional damage. This was negligence. Literal, provable, documented. And if they thought this was over, they didn't know me. Because next up, civil court. And I wasn't just coming for a ruling. I was coming for the record. The courtroom was quiet, sterile, humming with that low buzz of artificial civility. My parents sat across the aisle. Gerald, stiff in his gray suit, arms crossed like this, was beneath him. Marilyn had that tight-lipped smile she always wore when she was lying for sport. Victoria wasn't there. I figured she didn't want to risk ruining her perfect reputation by being caught in the same photo as the word defendant. Good choice. Judge Reeves presided again. God bless her. And the moment she entered, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. We weren't here to fight for custody anymore. This was the reckoning. The DA's office had agreed to press charges for falsifying legal documents, providing false statements to a state agency, child endangerment, attempted custodial interference. My father's lawyer argued they were confused, under stress, and meant well. Judge Reeves leaned forward. "Mr. Walker, can you explain what part of sipping cocktails in a luxury resort qualifies as stress?" He didn't answer. She turned to Marilyn. "And you? Any thoughts on why you thought your spa appointment took precedence over your granddaughter's safety?" Still no answer. So I stood. "I was at work, Your Honor, saving lives. They were lying to the state to save their vacation." Marilyn finally spoke. "We didn't know it would go this far." That was her defense. They didn't know. Didn't know the system would place Lily in foster care. Didn't know they'd be caught. Didn't know I'd stand up. Judge Reeves banged her gavel once. "Probation, mandatory parenting classes, 400 hours of community service each, and a permanent record on file with CPS. You're lucky the Martinez family stepped in, or we'd be having this conversation from a jail cell." Then came the part one didn't expect. She turned to me. "And Mr. Walker, this court recommends you consider civil damages. What your daughter endured matters." I nodded. Not for the money, not even for revenge, but for the record. Because some people only understand pain when it's dressed in court filings and legal costs. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. I didn't speak, just held Lily's hand, walked past the cameras, and whispered, "You're never going to be someone's afterthought again." And for the first time since this nightmare began, she believed me. Healing doesn't come with a verdict. It doesn't show up the moment the gavel drops or when the cameras go home. It comes later, quietly, in the small, silent spaces between the chaos. Lily still flinched when the doorbell rang. Still looked over her shoulder when we walked through the grocery store. And every time I picked up my phone, she'd pause like she was waiting to be handed off again. We started therapy with Dr. Thompson, a child psychologist who came recommended by both Rachel and the Martinezes. First, Lily sat in silence, drew pictures, colored in tight little circles, wouldn't say much. Then one day she asked, "Do people go away because they want to? Or because I do something wrong?" That question stuck in my ribs like a knife. Dr. Thompson handled it better than I could. But after that session, Lily slept in my bed for a week straight. One night, I asked her, "Do you feel safe with me again?" She didn't answer, just reached for my hand under the blanket and held it till she fell asleep. I started seeing someone too, a therapist who reminded me that being furious wasn't the same as being broken. That anger is a signpost, says you care. "You were betrayed," he said. "That's not a weakness. That's a wound. And wounds don't make you weak. They mean you fought." I liked that. At work, people tiptoed around the story. Word had gotten out. Some called it a family issue. Others, coworkers I barely knew, left sticky notes on my locker. You're a damn good dad. It helped. Rachel invited us to dinner one night. Her place was filled with books and mismatched furniture and warmth. Lily sat at the table with Rachel's daughter, both of them giggling over ice cream and crayons. "You've got people now," Rachel told me in the kitchen. "Not just the ones you were born with, the ones who show up. That's the family you protect." She was right. It wasn't blood that made someone family. It was who showed up when everything else fell apart. 3 weeks after the court hearing, Lily got invited to a birthday party. Nothing fancy, just a classmate with a backyard, cupcakes, and a bouncy house. But she hesitated. "Will you stay the whole time?" she asked, tugging at her sleeve. "Of course," I said. "Right outside. You can see me the whole time." She nodded, quietly, still unsure. That's how trauma talks in kids. It whispers doubts into normal moments. We got there early. I watched her watch the other kids. She walked toward them like the ground might disappear at any second. But then someone shouted, "Lily!" A girl ran over and grabbed her hand, pulled her toward the cake table. Just like that, she was laughing. I sat on the porch with Mr. Martinez. He'd been invited too. "She's doing better," he said, sipping his coffee. "Because of you and your wife," I replied. "You stepped in when no one else would." He shook his head. "You don't give yourself enough credit. You showed up, and you didn't run." We talked for an hour, about life, about fatherhood, about how sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is stay. Later that week, I hosted a small dinner. Rachel came with her daughter, the Martinezes, a couple of EMTs from my shift. Even my old neighbor, Mrs. Dufresne, the one who'd told me about the empty house that started all of this. We grilled outside. Lily made lemonade. Someone brought a fruit salad that had way too much melon in it, but no one complained. At one point, Lily stood up on her chair and said, "Can I say something?" The table went quiet. She took a deep breath and said, "Thank you for helping me and my dad. We're better now." There wasn't a dry eye at that table. Because healing doesn't happen in courtrooms. It happens in kitchens, in borrowed backyards, in circles of people who show up not because they have to, but because they choose to. It was a school assignment that brought it all to the surface. "Write about someone brave," the teacher said. Lily came home that night unusually quiet. No humming while she colored. No dramatic reenactments of recess politics. Just silence and a pencil moving slowly over paper. When I peeked, I saw my name at the top of the page. But the sentence that followed stopped me cold. "My dad is brave because he didn't let people steal me." I didn't say anything, just let her write. The next day, her teacher emailed me, "Samuel, Lily's essay." It moved the entire class. "Would you consider allowing her to read it at the end-of-year assembly?" I asked Lily if she wanted to. She paused, then nodded. "If you stand with me." And I did. 2 weeks later, she stood on stage, hands shaking, voice small but steady. She read every word she wrote. No edits, no sugarcoating. She said she'd been put somewhere strange, and that people who were supposed to love her forgot how. She said she missed her dad's voice, and smelled his shirt every night so she wouldn't forget home. And then she looked at the crowd, straight-backed, clear-eyed, and said, "But I'm not scared now, because my dad came back, and he made sure no one forgets me again." The room was silent. Then came the applause. Not the polite kind, the kind that starts slow, then rolls like thunder. Teachers, parents, even kids clapped like they needed to, because we all know what it means to be lost. But not everyone knows what it means to be found again. I held her hand as we walked off the stage. "You were amazing," I whispered. She looked up at me. "No," she said. "We were." Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it shows up dressed in silence, with a briefcase, a court date, and a witness list as long as a family photo album. The civil case went forward in July. It wasn't about money. Not really. It was about the record. The truth. The part that couldn't be spun into cocktail conversation or swept under a rug of family misunderstandings. My parents tried, of course. Their attorney painted it all as a tragic miscommunication from concerned grandparents. But their bank records didn't lie. Neither did their vacation itinerary, or the affidavit from Andrea at CPS, or the statement from Mrs. Martinez, or the school's record showing the forged guardianship forms with my parents' signatures in neat, damning ink. And then came the final blow. Lily, 8 years old. She asked to speak. Judge Reeves hesitated, understandably, but Lily walked up to the stand with the quiet strength of someone who had already survived more than most people 3 times her age. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just said, "They knew my dad was coming back, but they didn't wait. They said I wasn't their problem. So I had to live with strangers. But the strangers were kind. And my dad didn't stop looking for me. Not even one day." Then she looked at Marilyn. "You told me Daddy was too tired. But I saw his face. He wasn't tired. He was scared. For me." No further questions. The room was silent as Lily stepped down and walked straight to me. My father wouldn't look at me. My mother started crying. But by then it was too late. The court ruled in our favor. They were ordered to pay damages, real ones. Not symbolic. Not optional. Community service was upgraded. Their reputation? Publicly shredded. No more galas. No more charity brunches. Just the memory of the family they dismantled for a spa day. And as for Victoria, she issued a public statement distancing herself. Claimed she'd been misled. Which was fine. I didn't need revenge on her. She got something better. She got to see the family pedestal she'd been sitting on collapse beneath her feet. As for me, I didn't toast with champagne. I didn't gloat. I just walked home with Lily, her hand in mine. We passed a park. She looked up at me and said, "Can we stop for a while?" Sure. We sat on a bench. And in the breeze, in the late summer light, I realized something. I didn't need to burn their house down. They did that themselves. I just made sure everyone saw the ashes.